I think our best days are ahead of us, but only if we make these changes from within the ecosystem of lawyers and we don't find ourselves being attacked from technology from outside of people who are trying to change the ethical rules to change our business models.
Today on LawNext, Greg Garman, a lawyer who had a vision for how technology could help create a better staffing model for smaller law firms that led him to co-found the company LawClerk. This is Bob Ambrogi, and you're listening to LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we begin, let me take a moment to thank the sponsor that is making today's show possible. MyCase, the practice management solution that helps law firms streamline their workflow and maximize their output on one easy-to-use platform. I also want to remind our regular listeners that if you like LawNext, you can now support the show by visiting our Patreon page at patreon.com/LawNext and pledging a small amount in support. A big shout out to our two top-level Patreon supporters, Tim Stanley, CEO of Justia.com, and John Grant, founder of Agile Attorney Consulting at agileattorney.com. We'll get to today's interview in just a moment, but first, let's hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, on to this week's interview. Well, Greg Garman, welcome to LawNext.
Bob, thanks so much for having me.
What our listeners don't know or won't know, or fortunately don't have to live through, is we've just spent a half an hour with connection problems. These are the wonders and the perils of podcasting. You never know quite what's going to happen, but I really appreciate your patience in sitting through that and getting started with us today.
Well, my guess is it was probably my fault, and you're being gracious about it.
Not at all. Not at all. No, we've had all sorts of odd noises and this and that in the background in various challenges. It's one thing we've learned a lot about is to be prepared for the unexpected with this. So Greg, you founded LawClerk in 2016 along with two other co-founders, Talitha Kozlowski and Kristin Tyler. You were all practicing lawyers. Interestingly, just a year before starting LawClerk, you left the firm that you'd been at for, I think, nearly 18 years, a firm where you had been the managing partner, to start a new firm. So before we even get to LawClerk, let's start there. What were you doing at that prior firm, and what prompted you to leave and start your own firm?
Yeah, so it's hard to separate the LawClerk story from our personal story. So I graduated law school in the mid 90s. I joined a firm, a great firm, as a summer associate. I worked my way up to being the managing partner, and I'd been the managing partner from my mid 30s, and I guess I'm in my early 40s at this part of the story. And so my life was really living at the intersection of the practice of law and the business of law. Two very different things. And it was, my job not only to there's no glory in managing a law firm. You still have to maintain a robust practice, and you somehow have to keep the trains on time. And so, we had really what amounted to our first down year at the firm. And it wasn't a big down year. It was, measured in the single digit percentage points. And I met with my CFO, and we had intended to spend an afternoon kind of going through the books. And really the target of what we set out to do was to figure out whether or not, this was just a cash flow timing of cases and the kind of practices we had, whether it was a blip in our regional, we were a regional law firm. So we were a firm of, I think, 6 offices. We were in LA, Phoenix. I was based in Vegas. We were in a couple other cities. We had a lobbying operation that was based out of DC, and we were in a couple of state capitals. And so I sat down to look at the business, and I thought it was going to be a short examination. And it was really 2 weeks later that we left the conference room attached to my office, and I concluded that, law as we knew it was going to be great for some number of years going forward, but kind of is irrevocably in an old model that needed fixed. And I also concluded that the future of law was either at big law or small, solos, smalls, and boutiques. And it took me the better part of a couple weeks, but I gathered a subset of that partnership together and said, I think there's a better way to do it. It's really hard to kind of move the needle on a business model when you have as many people as we have here. And we left with, I think, 17 lawyers to open up the firm that we opened, Garman Turner Gordon, that still exists and still hums along. But it was really kind of that experience of the business of law has to change that caused me not only to leave, like a really great position I'd been at for 20 years and kind of go out and start a new firm. And then it really is the genesis of LawClerk. It's really great being a lawyer, but lawyers need new tools in this world. And providing those tools out of my own experience, particularly from going from a bigger platform to a smaller platform, is really where this story came from. And like they've grown in parallel, and now I spend most of my time at LawClerk, and we're really trying to give new tools and change the way firms can operate to make the business better.
Yeah, I mean, when you felt that old model was needed to change in some ways, what struck you as broken about it? What did you want to do differently when you started your new firm?
So it's probably important for this story to understand that I'm a corporate bankruptcy lawyer by training. I've spent 25 years representing companies with kind of broken capital structures, and lots of companies who found themselves facing evolution in the marketplace from competitors and not changing their ways. And so I guess I'm a little predisposed to look for what's not working in a business model and try and change it. But this is a business model that at its core is unchanged for 80 plus years. And we're the largest piece of the US economy at nearly 2% that hasn't been disrupted by technology. And that's a recipe for disaster on its own. But really what changed is the supply demand curve has just fundamentally shifted. And so lawyers like to say that, the Great Recession came around and clients changed their ways, and they said, we're not going to pay to train your young associates, and we're not going to, pay you ever escalating rates. But this is a business that really changed in like 2004, 2005, and 2006. There was a fundamental shift. And that's really when the supply demand curve crossed. So in context, I think what's wrong with this industry is that we have been immature in the way we approach a cost structure. So in 1975, not that many generations of lawyers ago, legal services were 0.5% of GDP. And then in 2006, it peaked out at just a shade short of 2%. So there's a couple of generations of lawyers in a booming economy of the 80s and the 90s and the early 2000s who saw legal services quadruple in size. And like we were shooting fish in a barrel as an industry. Like we just raised our rates every year by 10% or whatever the case may be, and the clients paid it. And it all changed because the economic fundamentals changed, and we have been stagnant or declining as a percentage of the economy since then. And, we need to start focusing on the cost structure, among other things. And that really was the wake up call for me, is that we can't focus exclusively on revenue. We have to focus on the cost structure and the delivery. And that really was the thing that I said, got to redo this business model. And so I did it not only in a firm, but then did it by starting LawClerk.
So how does LawClerk, what was your vision for how it was going to begin to address this? How was it going to change that delivery model?
Yeah, so I'm really proud to be a lawyer, and lawyers make the world better. We really do, when we're at our best, help the economy, we save jobs, we protect people, we do all those great things. But we're stuck in a business model that to me kind of looked like what doctors looked like in the 80s. We now live in more of a world of specialization, and being a general practitioner or a small firm is really, really hard. Because where 50 years ago, you could be a jack of all trades. You could do an estate plan for your client. You could handle their divorce if they needed it. You could take care of the litigation if they needed it. The world is just more complicated now. And so the biggest struggle that solos and small firms face is they face the ability to have the right talent when they need it. And so, if you're a general practitioner, you got a client base that's really trusting in what you do in your judgment. And they come to you and they expect you to solve their problems. And there are some days where you need you need an extra set of real estate eyes to help you with a lease for them. And you don't want to send them down the street because that's just a bad business for everybody. And so what we tried to do at LawClerk was to say, okay, solos and small firms, those of you with firms of 5 or fewer are our core practice. Yeah, we got lots of big firms and the like too, but 5 or fewer attorneys is the cornerstone of the LawClerk attorney client. And there are days that they need a real estate lawyer. There are days they need a tax lawyer. They can go to the platform, they can go to the marketplace and get on-demand help from licensed lawyers around the country when they need it. And it's better than having an associate. And the reason it's better than having an associate is that if you're a solo or small firm and you're a general practitioner and you hire an associate, well, you're just going to get another general practitioner. And you don't have enough work to keep one litigation associate busy and one real estate lawyer busy and one estate planning lawyer busy. And so really what we need a more efficient delivery model in which you get just the skill set that's needed by that brick and mortar lawyer when they need it without having to pay the full-time overhead and cost that makes it impossible to grow a practice in a way that has specialization of more than one practice area.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to mention the fact that the idea of the generalist lawyer is kind of a dying breed in and of itself. I mean, there aren't that many lawyers out there who aren't already kind of specializing in something of necessity, really. And so I imagine that ability to tap into people with lawyers with other kinds of knowledge, other areas of expertise is important for small firm lawyers these days.
Yeah, it is, but my experience as a practicing lawyer is that I've always had a really great client list of people who just they go to a lawyer because they trust that person's judgment. And the difference I've always said the difference between a good lawyer and a bad lawyer is the good lawyer tells you what you need to hear, and the bad lawyer tells you what you want to hear. And clients, they don't need to be told that they're going to win. They don't need to be told that everything is going to work out exactly as they dream it to work out. What they all want, in my experience, is they want somebody who they trust, who's going to work for them to get the best outcome possible. And good lawyers, like, they shoulder the fear and the oppression and the whatever that client's feeling, that they help share that burden. And so my entire career, I've seen people go to lawyers that they trust to do those things, kind of regardless of what practice area they're in. I don't hear stories very often of like, my lawyer is a real estate lawyer, so I'm not going to call him when I have a piece of litigation. They call that trusted advisor, and then they expect that trusted advisor to go get the right resource for them. And that's exactly what I was referring to when I drew an analogy to the medical industry, which is you go to your general practitioner and then they send you on to whatever specialist you need. And that's at the end of the day a better delivery of service because you get an expert, but yet you have somebody quarterbacking your needs who's your trusted general practitioner. And that's kind of the direction that I see solos and smalls, one of the directions I see them moving in the future.
Take a second to think about the best run law firms in the country. They consistently handle more cases in less time while spending fewer hours toiling over tasks like billing and client intake. My case was designed to help even the busiest law firms achieve peak efficiency. Through automation of routine administrative duties, templatized workflows, and centralized calendars, my case makes short work of your day-to-day processes and keeps your staff on task. Visit mycase.com to learn more and start a free trial. That's mycase.com. So walk us through it. I'm a small firm lawyer, and maybe I'm a real estate lawyer, and I've got somebody who's come in with a contract question or an employment question or something, and I decide I want to try LawClerk. What happens? How do I use it? What do I do?
Yeah. So you go on the site, and if you have an account, it's really quick to sign up. Everybody on the site, both sides, both the people hiring and the people who are doing the work, importantly, are both lawyers. So it's a B2B site, so there's no consumers who are allowed. So it's really a back office for a lawyer. So let's say you need, you have a client who comes in and says, I need an employee handbook. You could do it, but you're going to be really inefficient at it. And there are And the thing about the law is that 99% of what we do is a commodity, and we're scared to treat things like commodities. We think that everything has to be bespoke and custom created, and that's just not the best delivery for most legal needs. So you come to the site, you post a project, and you say, I'm looking for a employee handbook applying federal and Massachusetts law for my startup tech company of 20 employees, my client's startup tech company of 20 employees. So you self-identify a tag that says it's employment related, and it goes out to our network of thousands of freelance lawyers from across the country. And those who've self-identified employment as being their area of emphasis, they get a text message or an email that says, this is a project that went up. This is the flat fee price that the attorney is willing to pay. Because the hourly bill doesn't necessarily work for everyone, and the biggest fear we heard at the outset was, I want to make sure there's certainty in the pricing structure. We've all had that associate who had kind of a runaway billing month, and they way overdid it, and you couldn't get reimbursed, you couldn't get paid for. So it goes out. They apply to work with the attorney who posted the project. The attorney who posted the project reviews resumes, writing samples, and most importantly, they review the reviews of the previous attorneys who've worked with them on the site. And they decide who they want to work with. And then we give them the tools to communicate, share documents in an ethically compliant fashion. We've dealt with, in a really, really clever, sophisticated, and easy way. We've dealt with conflicts. We take care of the payment processing. We hold the money in escrow. We take care of the tax reporting at the end of the year. So essentially, we've tried to make it as easy as walking down the hall to an associate or a paralegal, or working with someone that you work with regularly remotely. And then we take care of all of the process stuff. We take care of all the ethical compliance issues. And you get a time card at the end of the day. And in all 50 states, it's ethically permissible to bill your freelance lawyer at reasonable market rates. Obviously, they're different in Indiana versus New York City, but at a reasonable market rate, the same way you would a paralegal or associate. And so not only can you get work done without overhead, not only can you get work done kind of more efficiently, you can find just that lawyer who does handbooks, employee handbooks in Massachusetts, time and time again. And their just knowledge base and their form bank makes for a much more efficient delivery of legal services. And so what we see at the end of the day, like the promise we try and provide at the end of the day, is lawyers are they're really great for the world, most of them. They're the best and brightest of the people I run into in my life. We need to continue to let them make just as much money as they're making now, or increase their incomes, but be able to provide services to their clients and reducing the cost. So our goal is to allow attorneys to be more profitable, get work done faster, move away from the billable hour potentially, and ultimately deliver a better product faster to their client. And that's really, having lived in this business and studied it for a long time, that's, I think, one of the tools that lawyers need to make this business evolve in ways that other industries have.
I mean, I heard you say earlier that one of the reasons that this is better than hiring an associate is if you hire an associate, you're going to get another generalist. You're not going to get somebody who has that specific subject matter expertise for whatever it is that needs to get done. But what about the economics of it? How do the economics of hiring or using lawyers through LawClerk compare to just going out and hire an associate?
Yeah. So we think of what we're doing in both an evolutionary fashion and someday in a revolutionary fashion. And so the evolutionary component is pretty easy. So the economics of an associate have traditionally been 1/3 of their billable time goes to their compensation, 1/3 goes to the overhead associated with, office space and conference rooms and printers and all those and insurance and all those things, and then 1/3 was intended to be kind of the profit margin for the firm, for the owner, the partners, and that's the rule of thumb model. But it's always been the case that inefficiency or low productivity, 2/3 of that equation is a fixed cost, and only that 1/3 profit component is variable. So if you have an underutilized associate, either because of lack of work to keep them busy or because the expertise isn't there and they're inefficient at the delivery of legal services, it comes out of the profit. So instantly, by using the gig economy and moving to this system of only hiring when you need it, you've taken the 1/3 that constituted the overhead out of the equation. And the second thing that it does is that, I've been practicing law 25-ish years, a few short of that. I could write an employee handbook, but it would take me an incredibly long amount of time and I would be inefficient at it. Finding real subject matter expertise, and I mean real niche expertise. When you have a marketplace of thousands and thousands of lawyers, you can find somebody who does an employee handbook every week under Massachusetts law. And so they have cutting edge forms, they have cutting edge assets at their fingertips that allow them to do it in a fraction of the time. And so the realization rate of the project can be higher, yet the ultimate cost someday, can be lower. And it's just a much more efficient delivery system. And candidly, it's as simple as this. When you can deliver more efficiently, there is ultimately more profit margin to be pulled out of a smaller fee. And so, this is kind of where that conversation about the billable hour versus how do we deliver, product more efficiently kind of comes into the conversation of where do we go as an industry. But that's the basic economics of it. Take the overhead out, find efficiency, and everybody, freelance lawyer and the attorney who has the client who needs the work done, all do better at the end of the day.
The freelancers, you call them clerks, I think, right?
Yeah, we call them law clerks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Law clerks. Okay, the law clerks. Who are they?
So they are all graduates of U.S. ABA-based law schools who are U.S. lawyers. Boy, I'll say that, when we started this marketplace, some of our competition really evolved out of staffing companies. And so when we did this, nobody was really doing what we're doing the way we're doing it in a true marketplace. We think of ourselves as kind of the eBay to other people's Amazon. We really are putting people together. And one of the things we worried about was, wow, are we going to?
Although in a prior conversation, you also analogize yourself to Uber and Airbnb, in the sense of sort of making use of all these.
Yeah. That's true. Well, it's kind of the same story. So I'll walk you through it. So when we started this, I was really terrified that the only people we were going to get as freelancers were like the unemployable recent law school graduate. And it's turned out to be so like 180 degrees from that. I will say there's probably a disproportionate kind of model freelancer that we have who's kind of that person who 6, 7, 8 years into their career, they found that raising kids was incompatible with working a 70-hour law firm job, and they decided to go a different direction in their life. Well trained, they have a few hours every night, hours on the weekend to work. That's kind of a cornerstone of our freelancers. But we literally have everything from the youngest of lawyers who are great for research projects to retired AmLaw 20 partners, practice group leaders who've said, I retired, but I don't need the money, but intellectually, I still want to kind of keep my head in the game. We've got law school professors who on breaks, who write appellate briefs or whatever the case may be. And, I know I've told you this before. One of the things we're most proud of is we regularly get super small projects like document reviews or demand letters. And then we regularly get U.S. Supreme Court briefs coming through the site where lawyers say, I need somebody to help me with this argument. And it's super cool to kind of see everything in between. But they're all U.S.-based lawyers. They're all graduates of ABA-accredited schools. But I will say, philosophically, we're a marketplace. So we don't tell you who you have to work with. Based upon kind of the price point, the sophistication you need, what you pay is going to determine kind of the quality and experience level of the freelancers who apply to work with you. And then really what happens though, Bob, is that people they essentially build a firm off our site. And so we have tools that allow people to build what we call the LawClerk teams. And they hire a team of lawyers, or they pick a team of lawyers, and they send their projects directly to these freelancers. And so that's where we are the backbone of small law in boutique law, in that we provide them the freelancers to work with on a regular basis, and they can send work directly to them and get all the benefits of the economics we talked about, but then all the benefits of the familiarity of working with the same attorney over and over and over again the way you would an associate.
You provide elasticity, right? I mean, when a lawyer's busy, they can use a law clerk. When they're not busy, they don't have the problem of having that associate sitting there idle. I think in a prior conversation, you even told me that a number of the lawyers who are hiring law clerks through your site sometimes turn around and put themselves out there as law clerks as well when times aren't so busy.
Yeah, so about 5% of the marketplace does both sides. They work when they're light, and they post projects when they're busy. But the best example is, I'm a trial lawyer by training. I'm at bankruptcy court, but litigation is about half the work that comes through the site. And the way it works is pretty simple. Every litigator knows what it's like to be headed to trial. There is literally no end of the amount of work that you have to get done in those weeks leading up to trial. You've got to get your evidence in place. You got to get the motions in place. There's always the motions in limine, jury instructions for state court and some federal court, and deposition summaries, witness prep. But then it all comes to an end. And the reality is that most of those lawyers want to take it a little easy, or they haven't been out there marketing for what the next case is. And elasticity in smaller firms is a critical component of our businesses. And that if you want to take some time off after that trial and you haven't filled the pipeline with the next case, you're going to be paying your associates a healthy sum when they're idle. And so that's kind of the flexibility. That's a really great case study of the ability to provide scalable, on-demand subject matter expertise. That's the win-win situation that we set out to provide.
Yeah. Does it ever happen that an attorney hires a law clerk through your site and it just doesn't work out?
Yeah. So about 0.75%. So less than one project in 100, it goes bad. I will say that that's a better success rate than I've had in my associates over the last 20 years. They don't deliver 99% of the time. But yeah, we certainly have projects that go bad. And the reality is we provide a money back guarantee, but the first line of defense is so every attorney on the site has a dedicated law clerk advisor, we call them, but essentially they're sort of a relationship that we build with our customers so that we can help with projects and help with pricing. And they have a relationship. And if your project isn't going right, or you're a little worried about the deadlines, we step in. Sometimes I have to admit that, the freelancers, they mess it up or they blow it. I mean, we've regrettably had situations where the freelancers died. Things happen in life. And so we step in and try and find a replacement and get the project done. And if we can't get it done and the attorney is still not satisfied, of course they're going to get their money back. But that's a fraction of 1% at the end of the day. And it happens. But again, it happens in law, and we are really, really aggressive in being a customer-centric company. And when those things happen, it's like a bell goes off in the offices here, and like everybody kind of jumps to try and make sure that we can make it right.
You made the analogy earlier to the gig economy, and one of the downsides of the gig economy is that workers sometimes aren't fairly compensated, aren't fairly treated. So how do law clerks make out who work through this site?
Yeah, so there really does a big spread depending upon experience level, as you might imagine. What we recommend so it's all flat fee based. So if you come in and you need a contract, the instructions we give you are, the old model was a third of the billable time went to compensation. Because we've taken the overhead out, we recommend that you estimate the number of hours it's going to take, and then give the freelancer 40% of that number. Young lawyers, well, what we tell people is you're really going to find somebody skilled, a nice mid-level attorney who's skilled, and you really need to pay, $80, $90 an hour to find the right person. If it's a simple project that you're looking for somebody who's a recent law school graduate, you can pay less and you're going to get applicants. But if you need a Supreme Court brief or an appellate brief to somebody, you're going to want to pay more. And so we have certainly found, that the average rates that go to our freelance lawyers fall in that range. Now, having said that, we don't set the prices. The prices are set by the attorneys, and we do view ourselves as a genuine, true marketplace. And at the end of the day, the supply-demand curve is going to dictate kind of market dynamics. And it's a little bit regrettable that we live in a world in which there is more supply coming out of law school than there is demand growing. And so I think this entire industry is under pricing pressure, and it's going to take a decade to sort of see where that shakes out.
Yeah, what is the kind of the supply demand? I mean, if I were to sign up tomorrow as a freelancer on your site, should I expect to be getting work fairly soon, or might I have a long lag time, or how does that work?
Yeah, so as of this morning, it's measured in the hundreds when you combine the projects that are posted on a site and the teams that are available to work directly with the attorneys. It's interesting in that projects go up and they get assigned relatively quickly, in that freelancers apply to work on the projects, and oftentimes within the hour, or certainly within an afternoon, projects go up and get assigned out. We have freelancers who the totality of their income comes from working on our site. And they do hundreds of projects. With some who've done hundreds of projects over their career with us. But most of the, I think most of the freelancers are, have a little extra time. There are government offices in New York where they told the government employees, we don't have the ability to give you a raise in tough economic times. So we'll allow you to do freelancing work, provided it's not for someone in the state of New York. So, if you were to log on now, you would see dozens and dozens of projects that are available to work on. But, I will say that, one thing we see is that lawyers tend to hire the freelancers who have a track record of having worked on projects. So, we oftentimes do have to tell some of the freelancers, hey, you might want to take a couple of smaller projects to build your reputation so that you're kind of a known quantity, because reputation is everything on the site. And, bad reviews, people don't get work. And when you have hundreds of good reviews, it's pretty easy to get. So, it takes a little bit of work to fill out your profile and develop kind of a robust presence on the site. But when all that happens, you have the ability to work full time for a lot of people.
We'll get back to my interview in just a moment. But first, let's take a break to hear from the sponsors who generously support LawNext. And now, let's continue this week's interview. So I know that you started this company in 2016. You spent some time developing and building it out before you kind of took it to market. Where are you in where you want to be with the development of this company, and where do you see it going over the next few years?
So, Bob, marketplaces are a bit unique in that you can't turn them on overnight and start selling 10,000 widgets. We make the analogy that it's a chicken and egg problem when you get a marketplace started. How do you get buyers and sellers and scale it? And so we started in 2016 with development, and because we were so focused on ethical compliance and making sure we didn't find ourselves on the wrong side of bar associations, which none have ever done anything but partner with us, we spent a year building out the technology before we deployed it. And so really it was the fourth quarter of 2017 in which we launched in a geographically limited way and kind of a friends and family launch to get commerce started. We called it the spark the engine phase of our life. And then I think I first met you at our national launch in Chicago for the tech show in February of 18. And that's when we launched nationally. And so year one was focused upon making sure that we had enough freelancers to cover all of the areas. And then now year two has been based upon adding more and more work and growing. And then we're actually at our scaling stage now. So we've recruited a bunch of really great legal talent from other legal tech startups, other marketplaces. And at the end of the day, where we hope and expect to be is I really want LawClerk to be one of the tools that helps legal advance. And it's not just one tool, but it'll be a bunch of tools. And I think that, we expect to see tens and tens of thousands of lawyers actively using the site as the infrastructure for their businesses. And so we want to be the backbone of legal. We want to make those lawyers more profitable. We want to make those lawyers deliver product faster and better. We love it so much when somebody calls and says, "You made me a better lawyer." And that really does, drive us at the end of the day. And we expect to be the place that solos and smalls go to do this piece of their business.
I mean, you're a tech company. Basically, you're a tech company, and you say you want to be one of the tools that helps the legal industry advance. But everything I hear you saying is that you're really more than a tool. You're really trying to help lawyers change the model, at least in solo and small firms, for how they provide and deliver legal services.
So we have a vision statement as a company, and our vision statement is that we want to forever improve the business and the practice of law for attorneys and in turn the public. And so I'm a lawyer, and I want the really smart people around me to make a really good living doing this. But at the end of the day, we have to deliver something better to our clients. We do a great job at it, but we have to evolve and be able to deliver a better product to our clients. And so when I look out into the world of tech, legal tech, there's a lot of really great things out there. There's document automation. We're on the cutting edges of AI. There are new models that are, coming forward to deliver services in a different way. We talk about there's not only fixed and hourly fees, but, there's all these different business models coming forward. And we want to be a piece of that story. One of my real big griefs with what we're doing as lawyers is that the billable hour is, for the totality of my career, it has been the default method in which we get paid. And the inherent conflict between us billing time and delivering a product to our client has been talked about. And since I started, people said, "Oh, the billable hour is on the way out." Well, it's not on the way out because we have like a dozen ways to replace it, but none of them are as profitable. And there's just no reason for the industry to adopt a less profitable billing system unless, there's like fundamental change in the market. And so what we would like LawClerk to be kind of in that revolutionary stage I talked about is that I want LawClerk to be the tool in which solos and smalls can move from the billable hour to a flat fee system with their clients and say, yeah, I'll get that will or trust done for $1,200. And they know confidently that they can go find an efficient, skilled freelancer with just the skill set that they need to do it for $400 or $450. And the attorney who has the client can spend a couple hours reviewing it. And at the end of the day, the effective amount they make on the project is more, but the cost that they charge their client is less. And so we are 2% of the US economy. And so let me put that in perspective. The amount of money that people spend on US based lawyers is the same size as the Israeli economy. It's bigger than the economy of Ireland and Singapore. It's 3 times the size of the global sports industry. Like, that's just how big an industry we are. But depending upon whose numbers you talk about, between half and 2/3 of legal needs go unmet by a lawyer. And that means that our future is actually a future of growth if we find a way to efficiently deliver a product to the people who have been cut out of the system. They can't afford it because it costs too much, or equally as prevalent is the uncertainty of the billable hour leads people to turn away from lawyers. And we don't want to talk about our work as commodities, but I will tell you, I'll take a commodity fortune any day over the amount of money that any lawyer in the world has made. The greatest fortunes in life have been built selling commodities. And I think that there's a way for us to do that at the end of the day in a way that allows lawyers to make more money. My second, problem with the billable hour is that I think every lawyer, Bob, you have that. Did somebody give you that picture of Abraham Lincoln that's at some point when you graduated that said like a lawyer's time and advice or his or her stock and trade? I think we've talked about this before, but that never happened.
Yeah. I don't think Abe Lincoln said his or her, but yeah.
Abe Lincoln didn't say that at all because it was in Lincoln's time until the 1930s, it was unethical to charge by the hour. There was a bar mandated price list, and most states actually had an ethical rule that said if you attempt to undercut your competition, that's an ethical violation. So like the 30s, 40s, 50s roll around, and there's a start of a movement. So in that time, we live in a world that's a factory and farm-based economy, and the hour was a proxy for value. And so if you were a factory worker, they knew how many widgets you could make in an hour. So we in law turned to that. It's not until the 70s that it becomes ethically permissible to charge by the hour in all states. I think there was a Supreme Court case called Goldfarb somewhere in the 70s that was an antitrust case. And so, it's a relatively recent modification to law that we began charging by the hour. It was a way to allow lawyers to make more money off the bar-approved price structure, but that day's run its course. And leverage is going to be what makes us more money going forward with technology and capital and expertise. And those are the things that those are the things I get excited about LawClerk is ultimately allowing us to move away from what I think is an inherently broken system in a way that protects not only the customer, the client, but the lawyer.
Well, and it really has the potential, as you said, to enhance access to justice. I mean, if you can charge more reasonable fees, if you can charge more predictable fees, then you're going to reach more people who can't afford a lawyer or who are just afraid of hiring a lawyer because they don't know what it's going to cost them.
So on that point, though, Bob, I actually think there's something more fundamentally concerning for us as not only a country but as an industry, which is we sometimes forget the importance of the rule of law as the cornerstone of our economy. We have a stable economy in the Western world in those countries in which the rule of law and the judiciary has been a balance on power. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact that that's not a guaranteed state. And I think there's a pretty compelling argument to be made that the rule of law inherent in the rule of law is access to the judiciary and access to the court system. And I think we're already beginning to lose it. And if you subscribe to the theory, and I do, that access to justice equals the rule of law, and the rule of law is essential to economic growth, I really think that some of these problems are a cause of a lack of economic growth that we're already starting to see. So I actually think these are bigger issues for us to face. And so, yeah, I don't know where that goes.
No, I think those are important points. I totally agree with you on that. Greg, where do you who funds you? How did you get the money to get started? And are you going to be looking for more money down the road?
Yeah, we've gone through 2 funding rounds so far. We had a seed round that candidly was like friends and family and self-funded. I've had the luxury of doing fairly well in this business, and surrounded by lawyers who I told them what the 3 of us were up to, and they all said, "Well, you're reasonably smart people, and that's a really good idea. So we'll give you some seed money." And then
You're in Vegas. You can just go down and throw some money on a roulette wheel or something.
Yeah. And then we got up and running, and that built the technology for us, and that got us started. And we had a second. It's still a seed round, but it was a bigger price seed round in which we brought in several $1 million to sort of fund the next piece. And I'm in the earliest stages of our next round, kind of a real venture round, and we're talking to some really great potential partners to bring that kind of venture value added money. And I think we're probably going to decide who and which direction we're going to go with, and sometime in the first quarter. And then really that's where we plan to scale this company, is that we've gotten to the place now where, we could add tens of thousands, if not literally hundreds of thousands of lawyers to the platform. And, this message about the business model of freelancing is much bigger than our company. And, it's much bigger than what we're doing, but it's certainly catching steam. And the things we hear every single day are, this is a competitive advantage for my business, my practice, and my firm. And all the indications are that we've got the tiger by the tail, and this thing does seem this whole concept does seem to be taking root.
And you've been focused on solo small market. I know you briefly also kind of went into the corporate legal market to an extent. But do you see yourself moving more up market, or do you continue to focus on the solo smalls?
So we have corporate clients who use us, but I will say that our focus is primarily solos and smalls. Look, there's a lot of really great companies out there. There's the Axioms of the world who are providing kind of alternative needs for the big corporate clients. There's a lot of great companies. I think like Hire and Esquire is a great company that is more of a traditional staffing company. Montage is out there. They're doing it different than we are, and that they run a curated site that's designed for a particular customer. Like I said, we're more philosophically a marketplace. So we're not the only ones out there doing it, but I think we're the only ones who are kind of doing it in the philosophical approach that we are. And so, solos and smalls. So when I walk around Tech Show and the ones we all go to, there's a lot of really great tools. They're disproportionately designed for big law. All those discovery tools, a lot of the more complicated document automation tools, some of those AI tools, and 3 out of every 4 lawyers in the country is in a firm of 5 or fewer, and half the lawyers in the country are in a firm of 1. And that's our core customer. But I will say that every single day, we get firms bigger than that signing up to say, I got a need for document review in a big case, and you guys are better than outsourcing it to India. Or we get corporate clients who come on and say, I don't want to pay $500 an hour for a document that's just a form. I want to pay $100 an hour. So we see that sort of story every day. But you're going to see us for the foreseeable future disproportionately spending our time on solos and smalls.
Greg, any last words? We're going to wrap this up shortly, but any other thoughts? Anything else we haven't talked about?
No, I really appreciate you having me on the show. And one of the things I love about your show is that you have people on, to sort of do a bit more of a deep dive into kind of the underlying components of this business that we're all in. And, time will tell whether we're on the right track or not. But we having lived at that intersection of business and law and spent most of my life doing that, I'm really kind of excited about the direction of our industry. And the one thing I guess I would like to stress before we cut it short is that there's a lot of doom and gloom talk in our industry about what happens now and where do we go. And I'm not a believer in that. There are definitely going to be winners and losers in change, but whatever change we come up with, provided we can deliver a better product more efficiently to the market, there is the ability for this industry to potentially double in size just by finding ways to deliver products to customers who've been excluded from what we're doing. And it's not going to be at $700 an hour, but it is going to be in a way that's scalable and as a commodity. And like I said, I think our best days are ahead of us, but only if we make these changes from within the kind of ecosystem of lawyers and we don't find ourselves being attacked from technology from outside of people who are trying to change the ethical rules to change our business model. So I think like the best days are ahead of us, but we collectively as an industry have got to focus on how we're going to do it differently. And we're in the first inning on that conversation. But
we are. We have to be more flexible, and we're willing to do things differently. But certainly there have been other companies that I've seen come and go over the years that have had similar ideas in some ways to what you're doing in terms of providing temporary help to law firms. And you mentioned some of them that are still out there serving larger firm markets or different markets, but. You guys seem to be doing something right, and it's good to see. And it's good to see that it's working well for you. And it's always a pleasure to talk to you and hear your ideas, not just about what you're doing with LawClerk, but you've got a lot of insights in the industry, and it's a pleasure to have you on.
Thanks again so much.
Before that about does it for today's show, and a big thanks to Greg Garman for taking what turned out to be a long time this afternoon getting set up and recording. So I really appreciate all of your time today, Greg. And another thanks to the sponsor of today's show, MyCase, with thousands of customers, is a trusted practice management solution helping lawyers across the country run organized, efficient, and successful law firms. You can try MyCase at mycase.com. And a big thanks, as always, to Ben Ambrogi for producing and editing the show. That's it for this week. This is Bob Ambrogi.